put yourself in that position really quick. Feel yourself squirm under the pressure. Feel yourself, just for a moment, feel yourself squirm under the pressure and feel yourself, for the first time in a long time, realizing, oh no, this is why I quit debating. This right here, this is why I don't do this shit. This was a bad move. Can someone please give me one major news event that was ongoing that Hasan didn't cover on the fly? Like I'm guilty of it too, right? But I'm probably a little bit more careful than he is. I just want to know, is there one example, one singular major event that Hasan did not cover as it was happening and then looked like a total subhumanly low IQ person afterwards, right? Russia, Ukraine, Kyle Rittenhouse, the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Propaganda is being played out online. My next guest has almost 500 million views for his provocative commentary online, making him hugely influential. Hasan Piker streams live under the name Hasan Abi. His analysis of the Israel-Hamas war has taken a highly critical stance towards Israel and Western media, and he's been calling me out for my coverage.
Because he only cares about Israeli citizens. He does not care about Palestinians as human beings. That's why it's apples to oranges. It's like one side is a human, the other side is a barbaric monster child.
It's funny. Hasan has forgotten what it's like. Hasan has forgotten what it's like to debate people, to interact with people that disagree with him. To look good in front of most people. I think, especially with his comments on China and Taiwan, and then for some reason saying that China was totally justified in invading and annexing Tibet because of they were like slave holders, which I, number one, am not entirely sure if that's true, and number two, I don't know if it's the same kind of slavery that we had in the United States. All right, Hasan should debate Sam Hyde. Do you know how much money I would get? I'm a poor man. All right, so it wouldn't be much, but proportional to my living conditions, it would be a lot to see that confrontation. Okay, I would love to see Hasan debate Sam Hyde. Piers goes hard and then gives up. Okay, gotcha. Part 2 was Piers allowing Hasan to monologue. Have you ever just wondered what it would be like to be a woman and lay down on bed and have a man just like as a hypothetical?
I never said that, obviously.
We're watching
He
this.
says that he'd like nothing more than to come onto Uncensored and call me a baboon in a suit to my face. Well, here I am, a baboon, and he can join me now. I'm joined by Hasan. Hasan, thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Piers. It's very early here in Los Angeles, California, but I'm going to try to do my very best to not do my British accent while I'm here.
Well, I appreciate that. And listen, I appreciate you coming on. Explain to me why you consider me a stenographer for the Israeli government, given that in the last week, I think more than any other host in the world, I have given lengthy platforms to pro-Palestinian voices to articulate that side of the argument.
No, I do have to commend you. You certainly have had more pro-Palestinian voices than the rest of the British media and certainly the rest of Western media in general. Now, as far as saying that you're a stenographer...
Now, I'm going to call this shit out every single time someone says it, okay? I have gone back and I've looked at the coverage of every Israel-Palestinian conflict since like YouTube has been around, okay? I can't speak to what happened in the 90s. I can't speak to, things that were posted that were covered in the early 2000s. I can't, all right? I'm one person and frankly, I don't think it matters that much. But, and this is important, every single news outlet except for Fox News, every single time there's a conflict between Palestinians and Israelis, they cover the Palestinian side and they talk about how bad shit is in Gaza. They talk about how bad the treatment of Palestinians are. This idea that there is a Western narrative being pushed by all the media in order to make brown people look bad because Israelis good, Palestinians bad, Muslims bad. is just false. It is just bullshit. There is no evidence for it whatsoever, unless you're just willing to believe that the news always gets it wrong. They are 1,000,000% covering both sides of this conflict in every single video that you can find online. Or I'm sorry, not every single video. And every single news agency covers both sides of this conflict. It is unfathomable to me to make this claim with any kind of confidence. If you have seen the coverage from major news corporations. Oh God, Hasan with another bad take? Just you wait. I'm sure we'll get more. In my country, there was a lot of criticism of how pro-Palestine coverage was in our national broadcast. All the experts were pro-Palestine. Well, I think that there is a difference between being pro-Palestine and being pro-Hamas, right? The people on Twitter, those guys are saying like Hamas based, okay? The people that are going out and marching, they're like not implicitly, but explicitly saying that these people are freedom fighters and doing great things for the people of Palestine, when Hamas is only hurting Palestinians. It's not about facts, it's about a vibe, honey.
Stenographer. I said that journalists are not supposed to be stenographers, and yet when it comes down to it, in most circumstances, in whatever conflict we may be in, they are stenographers for whichever party is aligning with the American State Department and the interests of the West in general. And Israel happens to be the one in this ongoing conflict.
But it's interesting that you call me a propagandist, because I want to play you. This was your reaction to when the hospital
Let's go.
got
I'm
bombed.
a propagandist.
Well, no,
for the record.
I'm not calling
I'm
you
a
that.
propagandist.
I'm just saying. I'm going to.
Wait, did he actually say that, or am I mishearing him?
Ongoing conflict.
But it's interesting that you call me a propagandist, because I want to play you. This was your reaction to when the hospital got bombed.
I'm a propagandist.
Well, no,
for the record.
I'm not calling
I'm a
you that.
propagandist.
We can cut this here. We can cut this shit right here. Why would you say that? Like, he's actually right. Like he's actually. By the way, it came from SFO's channel. I like what you're doing here, dude. Hey, I really appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. SFO's a really cool dude. The like 2 times that we've talked, have we talked on stream 2 times? I think we've talked on stream 2 times. And then all the DMs that we've had, he seems like a really like excellent person.
I'm just saying. I'm going to play you.
I'm saying I am.
Okay. Well, then
I'm saying I am.
I just
before
want to
you even play it.
Okay. I'm going to play the clip. This is your reaction.
He's trying to front load. He's trying to like, yeah. He's doing the Marshall Mathers Eminem technique in rap battles. Oh yeah, I'm a skinny white guy. I don't get no pussy. Yeah, you think that hurts my feelings? Taking all of their ammunition away. He learned so good from the white rapper. Man, how ironic is that?
To the bombing of the hospital the other night.
While I was in the process of getting ready for the stream, Israel enacted one of the singular worst strikes they have done thus far, and an Israeli airstrike hit the Al Ahli hospital in Gaza City, where thousands of civilians were seeking medical treatment and shelter from the relentless bombing campaign.
Now, interestingly, when you were saying that, I was coming on air too. And I took a position based probably on 30 years of being a journalist, running major newspapers, working at CNN and others, of waiting, of just saying, I think we should just wait and see what has actually happened here, get clarification, see who's actually to blame before we start passing judgment. You raised...
That's pretty based. Also, can I just say, I can't remember who pointed this out. Is it just like a British news thing where they bring people on specifically to confront them for talking shit? You know, I'm not 1,000% sure. Not 1,000% sure who I heard that from. But once I heard that, it really stuck with me. Sometimes, yeah, I don't feel like I ever see that in U.S. media where they're like, oh, I heard you were talking shit. Come onto my news program. It's just like Twitch politics, guys.
Based in to assume, as many people did, by the way, including the New York Times, BBC, mainstream media, and of course most of the Arab world then followed, that this was clearly, indisputably, an Israeli airstrike on this hospital. And yet all the evidence now suggests very strongly that it wasn't, that in fact this was a rocket that misfired coming from a terrorist group inside Gaza. So my question for you is this.
Far.
Why would you be so certain in what you said before you knew.
Yeah. Why would you be so certain? If you guys go back to my, I think it was last stream. No, it wasn't last stream because that one I streamed for just a little bit and then went and drank at a bar. The stream before my last stream on my channel. If you go back on that, you'll see me give so many caveats. Like now, most of the knowledge that I have on munitions comes from Call of Duty. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. All right. Made in 2011 or something, or maybe earlier, 2008. I don't know. But like, that's where my knowledge of munitions comes from. Where the is Hasan getting this knowledge of the types of missiles being blown up, right? Like, I can make a couple of assumptions, right? Like, okay, Israel has access to the most advanced types of missiles, the most advanced types of warplanes, right? It's probably going to be a really big explosion. I expect there to be a crater. I guess I could like look up videos of, how bad the damage is from Israeli airstrikes, and you can do that. And it's like an entire building just like on the ground with a crater, like super deep. Like you could fit like 3 people head to toe from the bottom of that crater to the top, right? And then you look at this hospital crater and it's like I couldn't fit my dick into it, right? Hey, I'll catch you later, Sarah. Thanks for the sub and thanks for coming by. It's been a blast. But yeah, like and then you see how much flames come up, and it's like it feels like there's a lot of fuel and not actual like explosive, like high yield explosive munitions going on there. But he literally said that looks like a JDAM missile when he looked at the crater. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what a JDAM missile is. I don't know what that shit stands for. All right, I've heard of them. I don't know what a SAM or SAM missile is. I don't know what a JDAM is. I don't know what any of these things are. But I know that some missiles go boom bigger than others. And we can make assumptions and inferences based off of what side uses what kinds of munitions, It was an F-bomb.
Okay.
Let's go.
So first and foremost, before we get started on this conversation, let's understand something very important here. There's no electricity in Gaza. Internet.
Oh, wait. When you looked at a crater, a JDAM is a plug-and-play guidance system that you can put on modern missiles without guidance systems. Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably should just... that's the problem with reading headlines, right? Yeah, you read the first sentence and you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know what a JDAM is, but the explanation is right there. Damn, I'm falling for the traps that I talk so much shit about.
It is patchy in Gaza. There's no food in Gaza. There's no water in Gaza. This is all by design. This is because Gaza is under a brutal blockade, a brutal occupation by the Israeli government. Okay? So that plays a role in the fog of war and the misinformation that gets spread. Having said that, however, you made it seem as though there is a certainty that this was 100% not an Israeli airstrike.
No, I didn't. And instead, I literally just said it's not a certainty.
Okay, sorry.
I said the evidence is increasingly pointing to this not being an Israeli airstrike.
Increasingly pointing does not mean certainty. You have to listen to the words that people say, Hasan.
And that is expert evidence from people who have no skin in the game at all.
I'm glad we watched this one before the Sunday one.
Well, I don't know which expert you're talking about, because I think Channel 4 did a pretty good job. As a matter of fact, I would say Channel 4 did probably the best job so far in analyzing everything that the IDF has said. But the reason why I believed, and I still do believe, that the likelihood is that this was an Israeli bombing campaign wasn't only because of the singular verifiable video, the phone video from the balcony that had all of the markings of an airstrike. The fact that the Israeli Air Force was enacting a bombing campaign in the region at the time, according to the Al Jazeera live streaming footage that everyone is using but doesn't understand. The fact that the digital media person for the IDF immediately came out and said that this was actually an airstrike that hit a Hamas target, and that he was sad that there were casualties at the end of the day, but this was a Hamas target and celebrated it. And more importantly, I guess, the fact that this hospital had been bombed by...
Now, I'll give just a tiny bit of charity to Hasan here. The fact that there was an IDF Twitter page that said, oh yeah, there were Hamas people there, right? They shouldn't have done that without approval. They should not have, because it even made me it muddied the waters even for me, who was more on the, it seems like it was probably, not an Israeli missile, right? But when you have someone from Israel saying Hamas was there, now it's like, Well, maybe these did do it. I don't know. Who knows at this point?
By Israel. This hospital
you know,
had been bombed
more
by Israel on
information came out.
Saturday. 22 hospitals have, as a matter of fact, been bombed by Israel since this last saga in the occupation. And this hospital had been bombed directly by Israel, where the cancer ward was destroyed. Israel has been bombing all of these hospitals. Israel has been calling all of these hospitals to evacuate.
Didn't you call the bombing of the cancer ward in Ukraine fake news? Like, I'm certain he did. I know he did. Okay.
Over and over and over again. The medical professionals at the hospital had been called by the Israeli government the day prior, and everyone on the ground assumes that this is an Israeli airstrike. They are the ones who experienced the situation.
Listen, Hasan,
so when you have
but the truth is,
can I just finish this?
if you watch the
Can I just finish
BBC,
this?
if you watch the
Can I-
BBC account of all this last night, by their Verify unit, which was specifically set up by the BBC to be completely dispassionate in these investigations, and they reached a pretty clear conclusion based on circumstantial evidence. I'll make that clear, that this would not have been an Israeli airstrike, including, for example, the size of the crater, which bears no relation to the size of craters normally left by Israeli. So, look, my point is, neither of us know for sure. But you took to your airwaves immediately because actually I wouldn't even say unconscious bias, your admitted propagandist bias on your part was that you wanted that to be an Israeli airstrike. It suited your narrative. And I would say that that in itself, in its way, is being a stenographer. Well, you accuse me of being a stenographer. I try and be fair and get to the truth. In your case, I don't think you try to do that. I think you appeal to your audience, appeal to your base, and you don't really care whether the facts are there or not.
Damn, this is like
This
a
is entirely
Destiny
unfair
Hasan debate
because
for
you just
real.
said circumstantial evidence favors that this was not an Israeli airstrike.
Yeah.
I gave you all of the circumstantial evidence that it does favor that this is an Israeli airstrike. The reason why, however, circumstantial evidence is not enough. And
You know what trumps? Hey guys, do you guys know what trumps circumstantial evidence? Physical evidence. Every time. Physical evidence trumps circumstantial evidence every time. And when there is no physical evidence that you can point towards that shows that Israel did it, but you can point towards physical evidence that shows that this seems like a Hamas bomb, suddenly we're looking at something that seems like it was a Hamas bomb.
One thing that I will concede to, because when more information did come out, and no, I do not mean when Israel said that they did not bomb this hospital and it was actually Hamas, and then they turned around and went, never mind, it's not Hamas, it's actually Islamic Jihad. And then they said, we have more evidence coming out in a couple hours. And then the evidence came out, and it turns out it sounded like the phone conversations that they were able to intercept, supposedly, sounded like, by experts at the very least, to be completely false and completely made up.
Hasan, I don't think, listen, in all honesty, I don't think even as you're saying all this, I think you're a smart guy.
Piers, let me finish.
I think you've looked at all of this, and I think in your heart, you know this was probably not an Israeli airstrike. And I'm just curious why you would, instead of admitting that as facts change,
that is
your
not what I'm
opinion
saying.
changed.
That is not what I'm saying at all.
I don't understand why you would double and treble down when the evidence is pointing the other way.
You're asking me to be on your show. Do you want to talk?
Yes.
If you're asking me to be on your show, and I want to be on the show, thank you so much for having me on your show. Let me explain exactly what I said,
show again,
and let me explain to you
Hasan.
why
I almost said
think
Hamas.
still, to this very moment, until there is a third-party investigation that is concluded by the UN, the International Criminal Court, or specifically a forensic analyst that looks at the situation, is allowed to be on the ground. This is not just my perspective. This is B'Tselem as well, which is an Israeli organization that has also demanded a third-party investigation occur. I am not going to conclusively say that this was not Israel's fault.
I don't expect you to.
Because I just gave you, and not because I'm a propagandist. As far as me being a propagandist goes, everyone is a propagandist. I'm just honest about it. You're a propagandist. We have our biases.
I'm curious who you think I'm a propagandist
honest
for.
about my biases.
Who do you think I'm a propagandist for?
Who do I think you're a propagandist for? Whichever every media person is doing propaganda.
But who for?
Not true.
I've got to be doing it for somebody.
You think it's a bad word? I don't. That's just the difference. This is a semantics
I think it's actually quite a...
I think that people need to understand what propaganda is, okay? Like, propaganda is intentionally skewed news, or whether it's true or false, right? Or uses parts of the truth in order to achieve some sort of aim within the populace that you're targeting, right? Usually the propaganda is going to be citizens of whatever state is putting out propaganda, or to sow discord within a population, that's what propaganda is. Whereas now this might trigger some of the people from DevStream, and I apologize in advance, but I like mainstream media. They get it right significantly more than they get wrong. And you can cross-reference different major news organizations and say, okay, well, these people have this kind of bias, right? And these people have this kind of bias, but the actual facts of the matter seem to match, right? They both independently went in and looked at this, and they came to the same conclusion, right? Especially when you start looking at major news publications, not just in America like CNN and Fox News, but if you like compare CNN's coverage to places like Al Jazeera or BBC from all these different countries, and those same media corporations all have the same set of facts that they have independently verified. At that point, now we're saying, okay, this is 99% what happened, unless some crazy, forensic shit went bad. Information, especially of a bias or misleading nature, used to promote a political cause or point of view. Yeah, I mean, that's a more succinct way of putting what I said. Hey, look, it's Samantha. How's it going, Samantha? I can believe this dumbass really said all that while also admitting to be a propagandist. Or you can't, yeah. And then he backpedals by saying, everyone is a propagandist. Huh, I'm a propagandist, you're a propagandist. Look, propagandist doesn't mean anything because everyone's a propagandist. True. It's like the gender arguments. Like, if everyone is, a woman, or if everyone can identify as a woman, then nobody is a woman. If everyone can identify as a vampire, then nobody is a vampire. Gender. New viewers aren't going to get the in jokes here. Sorry.
Serious charge, Hasan. I think it's a serious charge to level, not as a podcaster, but as a journalist who's broadcasting around the world, who has a reputation, I believe, for being fair and impartial, actually, on these issues. It's quite a charge to just say, I'm a stenographer for the Israeli government, or I'm a propagandist. I don't think there's any evidence that I'm either of those things. I'm curious who you think I'm doing
while
the
we're having
propaganda
this
for.
conversation,
who am I a propagandist for?
Piers, while we're having this back and forth, 3,840 Palestinians have been ruthlessly slaughtered in the last incursion into Gaza. I feel like this is an incredibly selfish, self-centered conversation to have. You asked me to be on here. You wanted to hear my perspective. I'm willing to give it to you. I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about Noam Chomsky style manufacturing consent conversations about how the media is operating at the behest of capital.
You were the guy that called me.
There are dead people.
Listen, Hasan, I only asked you because you're the guy that called me a propagandist and called me a baboon in a suit. I was curious as to why. You don't want to say who I'm doing the propaganda for. We'll move on. I agree with you. There's a bigger picture here. Let's move on.
Yeah, don't throw stones in glass houses, Hasan.
Take a short break. Hasan, let's take a short break. I want to come back. I want to talk to you about what happened on October the 7th, get your reaction to that. Welcome back, Hasan Piker is still with me. Hasan, I want to just play you a clip of something that you said about the October 7th terror attacks, and in particular...
Oh, man, can you imagine being in Hasan's position right here, guys? Just for a second. I want everyone to close your eyes. Just imagine. You have a very large public presence. People look to you for your opinions, right? Your life is always on display because you are a live streamer. Every single thought that comes into your head, you put out into the ether. And then, because you talked shit, someone who is even larger pulls you onto their show and just plays clip after clip of you being in your living room talking shit. For how long is this interview? 25 minutes. And you have to try and look good in this. All right? Put yourself in that position really quick. Feel yourself squirm under the pressure. Feel yourself, just for a moment, feel yourself squirm under the pressure and feel yourself, for the first time in a long time, realizing, oh no, this is why I quit debating. This right here, this is why I don't do this shit. This was a bad move. Jesus Christ.
The attack at the music festival, which killed 260 people.
Look at this guy. You know what shouldn't happen? Killing 260 people at a music festival. No, you're right, man. That just happened on its own because, like, bad guys wanted to do bad things. You're right. Dude.
Unironically? Yeah? Can you think of a justified reason to... I showed this clip earlier, but I'm going to show the clip again. Here, let's just go ahead and go right back into my YouTube history. when you are mowing down people at a music festival, like people mowing down feral hogs, maybe, just maybe, you're the bad guy. When the way that you're killing human civilians, is the same way that the state of Texas, or the same way that people take out feral hogs that the state of Texas will pay you to do, right? Maybe this is a war crime, completely unjustifiable, morally disgusting. Weak use the COD airport scene. Well, that would be different, I think. That would be more like the mass shooting events.
If they
This was a targeted military operation.
subjugated you to a open air prison your whole life, you're going to break out eventually when you realize that there's no other way to get out of it.
I mean, it sounds to me there, Hasan, that you are in some way saying they had it coming. Were you?
No, I wouldn't say that they had it coming. I think that Michael Brooks used to say, analysis is not justification. And while obviously civilian casualties and horrific barbaric acts that were...
Hold on. I want to hear what he said again. Don't say that you're Michael Brooks just analyzing the situation. Let's hear your words again.
Terror attacks,
Hamas,
in particular, the attack at the music festival, which killed 260 people.
Look at this guy. You know what shouldn't happen? Killing 260 people at a music festival. No, you're right, man. That just happened on its own because, like, bad guys wanted to do bad things. You're right. Dude, if they subjugated you to a open air prison your whole life, you're going to break out eventually when you realize that there's no other way to get out of it.
I mean, it sounds to me there, Hasan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was giving it a reason, right? He was giving it a reason, which is not good. I'm definitely gonna lose a. I didn't. Yeah. They in echoes. Nope. I lost what I was gonna say. Never mind.
That you are in some way saying they had it coming. Were you?
No, I wouldn't say that they had it coming. I think that Michael Brooks used to say, analysis is not justification. And while obviously civilian casualties and horrific barbaric acts that were committed on October 7th are completely unacceptable, the important thing to make sure that it never happens again is to analyze what are the conditions as to how it happened to begin with. And I think Ehud Barak is going to be on in a little bit as well, or maybe he's on before me.
Yeah.
And I'm almost certain that while he has held the keys to the conversation and held the levers of the power in this conversation in many key and critical points, I would go so far as to say that he is among many others who also recognize that the Bibi Netanyahu administration is responsible. This is not just my assessment. This is 85% of the Israeli population's assessment at the time. This is years and years and years of refusing to negotiate with the Palestinian Authority. Don't take my word for it. Take Bibi Netanyahu's personal word for it.
I would agree again.
In a closed-door conversation with Likud members, he said that if you want to thwart any kind of Palestinian nation state, you must do everything you can to only negotiate with Hamas. We control how high the fire goes. He's given cash to Hamas by way of Qatar. There is no bigger fan of Hamas than Bibi Netanyahu, which I hope one day you can maybe interview, and then you'll ask him to.
No, I actually did interview him.
Oh, is that confirmed, by the way? Because I've heard different from a person that I trust to talk about Palestine more than Hasan. Right, like the loner box, the loner box source is just too much to give up. Right, it's just so good. My understanding is that Hamas came up originally as a like nonprofit humanitarian organization, charity organization, and then they flipped on that. Yes, it is confirmed. It's just not him handing them cash, though. Okay. Well, I'll have to read more into that then.
A few months ago, and I did actually spell out to him that there have been a lot more Palestinian deaths this year so far, up to the point of the interview, than Israelis, and what he intended to do about it. He said then he didn't believe in collective responsibility, which is now this hot phrase in this whole crisis about whether you would hold all people in Gaza responsible for Hamas. Interesting to see if when they.
Can I ask
let me just finish my point. If they do then launch a ground invasion, it'd be interesting to see if they keep to that word. You know, I'm not a defender of what Bibi Netanyahu has been doing in Israel. In the last year, his attack on the credibility and integrity of the Supreme Court, I think, has been a disgrace. And I think it has fractured society in Israel. I also think that it's caused so much social unrest and had such big protests that you could argue it's taken the eye off the ball of the people who should have been defending the border because they've been trying to sort out what's been going on domestically, internally inside Israel. So I think it's a catastrophic failure of intelligence, of security, of defense, all of those things. I'll be amazed, frankly, if Netanyahu survives this. So I'm certainly not here to defend him, even if you do view me as a stenographer for his government. My question for you, I think, is this, is that I've had a lot of problems trying to get people on the pro-Palestinian side to separate two things. That you can say, as I believe and you believe, that the Palestinians have been maltreated for decades. That the situation where they are effectively, I mean, I don't even call it an occupation because Israelis aren't in Gaza. They pulled out in 2005, but they still control the ability of Gaza.
This is why I call you a propagandist.
I'm just saying the phraseology is confusing to me because the reality is Israel exercises control over people in Gaza. It allows them in and out. It allows them to turn on the tap of water and so on and so on. I get all that. They don't actually live there because they can't live side by side with each other.
That's why it's called an open-air prison.
Right. I don't disagree with you.
That's why they call it the world's largest open-air prison.
Yeah, but Hasan, I don't disagree with you. And I've pointed this out for a long time as a journalist. So we don't disagree about the appalling plight of Palestinian people. But the issue comes that if you can't separate that ongoing dispute between Israel and Palestine from the absolutely appalling barbarism of October the 7th, which was on a whole different scale to anything we've seen, where 1,400 people, Holocaust survivors, babies in their cribs, young women taken, tortured, abused, shot, beheaded.
Yeah, can you guys imagine just for a second, you're a Holocaust survivor, you're 90,000 years old, right? You survived the single most systematic destruction of an ethnic/religious group in all of human history, right? On an industrial scale, right? Depending on where this Holocaust survivor was from, they might have also survived the Holodomor, the single greatest targeted starvation of a group of people, right? There's some people that survived both of those things. Let's say this person was from, the Soviet Union during the Holodomor, and they survived the Holocaust, and then they get to live out their lives for a long period of time. Everything's chilling. There's a couple of scares from Hamas over the years, but nothing too bad. And then you get taken prisoner by a terrorist group after all of that with your Holocaust tattoo still on your goddamn arm. Can you imagine? That shit's so crazy to me.
It was reported and so on. If we can't look at that collectively, with a general humanity and agreement that is an absolute atrocity,
because they're retarded.
And there's something wrong with this. And I find that the tribalism on both sides is now so toxic and so frenzied that you get people who literally can't. We've had a bunch of actors, right, signing this statement saying they want a ceasefire in Gaza and calling Israel war criminals and so on. But they don't say a word about the Hamas attacks that precipitated this. And I find that really hard, right? Really hard to accept.
But do you agree with them? If they had said, for example, that October 7 attacks were brutal and massacres occurred, and then they said everything else, that Israel is committing war crimes, would you agree with them?
Okay, here's what I would honestly...
I don't know if I would... I could be pushed on this pretty easily, I think. But I don't think that I would be in favor... If I was in charge of trying to get rid of Hamas, if I was in charge of this situation, I don't know if without some sort of major concessions from Hamas, right? I don't know if I would be willing to do a ceasefire, right? The ceasefire is always going to benefit the side that is on the back foot. Hamas is on the back foot now. All right. They have the entirety of the Israeli military breathing down their neck, Look how Piers Morgan waffles here and doesn't answer the question. Yeah, I'll look at that. This is a genuinely difficult question to answer. Because if you give a ceasefire and you allow, for whatever the ceasefire's time period is going to be, that time period is going to be Hamas building up fucking defenses, setting booby traps, digging more tunnels, et cetera, right? I don't think that would be in Israel's best interest whatsoever. Even if it was good in terms of their optics on an international stage, I don't know if that's worth it when you look at how much these guys can, prepare in a short amount of time, right? Because they don't have to build up bunkers, right? They don't have to build up, trenches, bunkers, build tanks or anything. It's not months. They just need a couple of days to figure out where they're going to place militants, to place booby traps, to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a really, really difficult question to answer. We'll see how Piers waffles on it. Maybe he gives an answer that is just like a shitty answer and that I wouldn't agree with. But yeah, this is a really difficult question.
Do you agree with them? If they had said, for example, that October 7 attacks were brutal and massacres occurred, and then they said everything else, that Israel is committing war crimes, would you agree with them?
Okay, here's what I would honestly say about that. Is Israel not allowed to defend itself from the worst terror attack we've seen since 9/11? Is it not allowed to defend itself
just odd.
after
You said
1,400 people in Israel
propagandist.
are butchered in that way? And the question then, if you assume that they are able to defend themselves, as any
Piers,
free
that is
democratic country,
that is the
then
Israeli
question
State
becomes,
Department line,
Hasan,
that is the IDF's line, that is the line that everyone
Hasan, let me ask you this. It then becomes a question.
Just because the State Department and just because the IDF says it doesn't mean it's not true, right? Take the information as it is, right? And then verify. But just because, don't just look at a source unless it's just like an absolutely completely poisoned source, right? Like I would say I'm trying to think of an example on both the left and the right because I want to be unbiased here, right? But we can think of one on the right, Breitbart. It's going to be heavily skewed, right? Take everything that is said there with a ultra huge 2-ton pinch of salt. On the left, I guess people like the Gray Zone or Brianna Joy Gray, no, because they're not. No, they're probably as bad as Breitbart. Never mind. I'm being too nice. It's true. They're probably as bad as Breitbart.
Question of how can they defend themselves? If their mission now is to get rid of Hamas, a terror organization that's committed one of the worst acts of terror ever seen, if that is their stated aim, then what they are doing is consistent with that, isn't it?
No. Here's why this is actually an abject failure, and this is not just my perspective on the matter. I'm just a dumb idiot with a Twitch stream who is live reacting to the news and trying to make sense of everything as it's ongoing. I usually have a policy of not covering breaking news, and sometimes that policy is violated.
This is the only clip that I've seen from this. This is so funny. He admits that he's a retard, but then everything after that is a lie. I usually have a policy of not covering breaking news. Can someone please give me one major news event that was ongoing that Hasan didn't cover on the fly? I'm guilty of it too, right? But I'm probably a little bit more careful than he is. I just want to know. Is there one example, one singular major event that Hasan did not cover as it was happening and then looked like a total, subhumanly low IQ person afterwards, right? Russia-Ukraine, Kyle Rittenhouse, the Israel-Palestine conflict, right? What the else? I'm pretty sure there was something with Joe Biden, but I'm not 1,000% sure. Yeah, it's just so stupid.
But ultimately, I am not held up by the same journalistic standards, even though I think I do a much better job than most other news outlets in general. So let me just say this really quickly. You said Israel has a right to defend itself. Absolutely zero people think that this is a ridiculous statement. However, how Israel is defending itself is collective punishment. Now, collective punishment in the form of depriving 2.2 million people of electricity, collective punishment in the form of depriving them of water, of food, collective punishment of in the form of 51 people dying in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas in the West Bank, and yet 51 people have died because in the West Bank, settlers that are occupying Palestinian territory in violation of the international law, settlers who are doing an act of colonial terrorism, and this is not my statement on it, this is international law, that are doing horrifying things by simply just existing there and maintaining the presence with an occupying force in the form of IDF, who is ritualistically humiliating Palestinians in a structure that B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, calls.
I was trying to let him finish before I responded. He rambled so much I can't even respond to what he was saying.
And sometimes that policy is violated, but ultimately I am not held up by the same journalistic standards, even though I think I do a much better job than most other news outlets in general. So let me just say this really quickly. You said Israel has a right to defend itself. Absolutely zero people think that this is a ridiculous statement. However, how Israel is defending itself is collective punishment. Now,
here is the question that I have asked multiple lefties, people who are, talking shit on Israel, right? This is the question that everyone needs to answer, or everyone needs to ask these people. what would be an acceptable response? There is no world where Israel doesn't respond to this militarily. There is no world where responding to this with anything but like a military response is going to happen. If you don't respond militarily, then Hamas is going to say, look, we did this horrible terrorist attack, and then they came to the table to negotiate, and we got concessions out of them. You have to do something militarily, right? That would be, it would be just like caving to terrorism, right? This is why people say we don't negotiate with terrorists. The reason why is because you're giving positive reinforcement to terrorist actions. I haven't seen any progressive say otherwise to what? Right? You usually get something about proportional response. However, 1 to 10,000 is a proportionate response. What they seem to mean is an equivalent response. Yeah, of course. They want an equivalent response or like a 1-to-1 response, but they don't know how that works, right? Like, how does Israel respond? That is the question that I have asked so many people, and no one has an answer, or they have a completely unrealistic answer, like that Red Charlotte on Twitter, right? That used to stream. Like, she said, "Oh, well, we should just let there be a one-state solution where the Palestinians are able to create a secular, multicultural state." It's like, why would you even advocate for that? They don't advocate for that. If they're not even going to advocate for that, why would you say that that's like a possibility at all? Even the Palestinians don't want that. Hey, how's it going, food shops? Well, I'm glad that you're rendering a video. What is this clip?
No. Here's why this is actually an abject failure, and this is not just my perspective on the matter. I'm just a dumb idiot with a Twitch stream who is live reacting to the news and trying to make sense of everything as it's ongoing. I usually have a policy of not covering breaking news, and sometimes that policy is violated.
Who is this guy?
Ultimately, I'm not held up by the same journalistic standards, even though I think I do a much better job than most other news outlets in. No.
I've never heard of this streamer, but based. Okay, one sec. Let's see here. Okay, one more clip. Or one more link. Hi, Cat. Wait, is Food Shop's name Cat? Of course. Anyone who wants to support the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. Support these. Yeah, it's a bad strategy. That's bad. Don't worry about it, food shops.
Collective punishment in the form of depriving 2.2 million people of electricity, collective punishment in the form of depriving them of water, of food, collective punishment of in the form of 51 people dying in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas in the West Bank, and yet 51 people have died because in the West Bank, settlers that are occupying Palestinian territory in violation of the international law, settlers who are doing an act of colonial terrorism, and this is not my statement on it, this is international law, that are doing horrifying things by simply just existing there and maintaining the presence with an occupying force in the form of IDF, who is ritualistically humiliating Palestinians in a structure that B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, calls the permit regime, where every waking moment of Palestinians' lives in the West Bank are absolute hell, where they have no legal recourse. 51 Palestinians have died, and that was before the Ramallah, the Ramallah protest that happened last night, and the Israeli forces were opening up with live fire on protesters last night. So who knows what that death toll has become? This is all a product of Israel being.
So in the West Bank, now I'm not going to sit here and say that the situations in the West Bank and Gaza are the same, or that Hamas is active in the West Bank, because I don't know whether that is the case or if that's changed. But let's talk about what's happening in the West Bank. What's happening in the West Bank is, yeah, there are going to be protests. They see people killing Palestinians in Gaza, they're probably not too happy about that, right? They're protesting. Some people became violent. Some of those people got shot. That's bad, right? There probably should be some kind of response that isn't shooting protesters or something like that, right? There are also, yes, like Hasan said, there are settlers who have just like murdered Palestinians in the past week or two. Like that has happened, especially because I believe the IDF released some military arms for people to defend themselves in case something like that happened in the West Bank. So yeah, the IDF might have made a misstep there, but I don't know. It kind of feels like maybe those motherfuckers should have an AR-15 in their house just in case, just in case. But there are militant groups even in the West Bank. I don't know if it's Hamas, but there are militants in the West Bank. There was a bombing of a mosque that everyone was super upset about, but there were munitions there. They were plotting an attack from there. They had intelligence, and I believe that's been corroborated from third-party sources, not just the IDF, right? It does not benefit Israel in any way, shape, or form to indiscriminately bomb religious institutions. It makes them look really bad, and it lowers their support internationally. It does not benefit the IDF to just bomb civilians indiscriminately. If they can, get away with bombing, some Hamas position, but there's a lot of civilians there that would normally be like, I don't know if we could hit this without, a lot of civilian casualties. Yeah, you could make that argument. But in the case of this, I don't think that was the case at all. But,
An apartheid state. This is a violent apartheid state. There is no way to be a peaceful
Hasan, let me
apartheid
ask you this.
state. It is a violence. It is violence required for its maintenance.
Okay, listen.
And that violence is frustrating people.
I hear
that
you.
violence is radicalizing people.
Hold on.
As far as Israel, as far as what Benjamin Netanyahu has done, as far as the war government, what they have done, Piers, going into Gaza and bombing Gaza and killing 3,480 Palestinians so far in Gaza, 1,000 plus children out of all of those casualties, 22 hospitals being bombed, a bakery, the only remaining intact bakery being bombed yesterday. These are horrifying crimes that you would openly say are horrifying and unjustifiable when Russia does it, but when Israel does it, Israel has a right to defend itself. This is identical to the same talking points that I've heard from every Israeli administration official. It's the same talking points that I've heard from American politicians championing the exact same talking points. It's the same thing that I've heard from everyone else in the media. You might have been against the Iraq war, and you use that, but you're using that for evil, in my opinion, at this point, if you are not sitting here and condemning those acts of war crimes, those acts of violence, those acts of collective punishment.
Well, I would say to that I think the death of any child in this conflict is horrific, absolutely horrific. But the question comes down to me that after an act of terror, as we saw on October the 7th, Israel should be able to defend itself and should be able to go after the people that perpetrated that, who live among civilians in Gaza deliberately. And the question for me becomes down to what is proportionate. I don't know the answer, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what that answer is.
I do know the answer to that. Last night I had Dr. Ofer Kassif, an Israeli Knesset member who was expelled, suspended for 45 days for saying what I believe is the truth, championing the exact same position of the Haaretz's editorial board. There are a lot of thoughtful people, a lot of formative Holocaust scholars, a lot of historians that all agree on the same point. The reason why violence that even penetrates through the Israeli security blanket that people thought existed, that penetrated through that Iron Dome, the Iron Wall, if you want to call it that, is because of years and years of oppression and years of violence, which is a necessity to maintain an apartheid state. And this has to stop. There's only two ways out of this. Either you engage in full-blown ethnic cleansing, and if you listen to the likes of Smotrich, or if you listen to the likes of Itamar Ben-Gvir and these very unfavorable, unpopular, far-right figures, if you listen to Netanyahu and his Likud government, they say that they are interested in going in that direction, the ethnic cleansing direction, the ethnic displacement direction, or the only way out of this for a real solution is to move towards peace, to genuinely end the blockade, to end apartheid, to end the occupation, and create a pathway towards citizenship for all people with a right to return, for all 14 million Palestinians, 5 million of.
But that is a long-term goal. That is That is not answering the question of what would be an acceptable response right now. I'm sorry. Right now, Palestinians are not going to get their rights. Who do we have to blame for that? It's Hamas. That's who you have to blame for that. You're not going to have a successful terrorist attack against a nation. And then, they're going to be like, oh, well, what, we're just going to be nice to, all the Palestinians. We're going to cave to every single demand that the terrorists made. Nothing bad will happen here. Nothing bad will happen. It is a pipe dream. It is a pipe dream to think that there's going to be any other response from the Israelis that is going to be anything but my life. Anything but like a military response. So engage with that. What would be the acceptable military response?
Which live under Israeli occupation. It's brutal. And then the rest living in diaspora. These are not unreasonable requests. These are requests that understand the dignity and the humanity of one side and does not simply treat them as their colonial subjects.
Hasan,
and it's the only way to create permanent security and prosperity in the region.
If it was as simple as that, I'm sure that would have happened already. I would say this. I agree with a lot of what you've just said. Not all of it, a lot of it. I don't think you can ever achieve peace now with Hamas controlling Gaza. I don't think you can achieve peace with Netanyahu in charge of Israel, actually, after this. I don't think his own people will want him to be in charge of Israel down the line when they examine exactly how this happened. But we will see. But Hasan, I've got to leave it there. Look, it's good to talk to you. You're an important, influential voice to a lot of people. And I think we have a lot of common ground, and there are some things that we disagree about. But I suspect it's not as much as you think. I do think that the core problem here has got to get resolved in a way that's been completely ignored for decades. And until it gets resolved, until the plight of the Palestinian people is resolved, until all these young people in Palestine feel there's some sense of hope and they can get out of what effectively is, as you say, a prison camp, then nothing is going to change. I don't think it justifies in any. I've got to finish it, but I don't think it justifies in any way what happened on October the 7th. But I do agree with you that until
a good response, Israel pays each Gazan who wants to leave $20,000 with a commitment to not return for 20 years. I don't think. No, I don't think that that's a good response. PZH. I don't think that there is a path where military intervention is not going to happen. What did Piers say that was bad?
Effectively is, as you say, a prison camp, then nothing is going to change. I don't think it justifies in any. I've got to finish it, but I don't think it justifies in any way what happened on October the 7th. But I do agree with you that until that core problem gets resolved, there will never be peace. Sam, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Jesus. Man, Hasan did not look good in the first half of that interview, but then he did. You guys were right. The first half, Piers went hard. In the second half, he softened up and let Hasan kind of monologue a whole lot. There's been good reason not to trust Palestinian leaders yet, not until they teach coexistence. Until then, there's no point in bad faith talks of peace. True. Saudi Arabia changed their curriculum and took away much of the anti-Semitism before their normalization talks with Israel. Well, that's good. That's pretty nice. That's pretty poggers.